Hello everyone, my name's Susan Bell, and in this short video we're going to look at how to apply the 5 tests for reliable information by evaluating 3 articles on the topic of misinformation. You'll find the links to each article below the video. Here is a quick refresher on the 5 tests. The authority test asks who produced the information. The audience test asks who the information is intended for. The transparency test asks whether the information can be verified. The objectivity test asks why the information is being provided. And the currency test asks whether the information is up to date. Now I'm going to use these 3 articles to show you how the 5 tests can be used to make some quick decisions about authority and reliability. The first thing I notice about this article is the advertising banner at the top. It's a bit of a red flag because academically reliable information doesn't usually come from sites with flashing banner ads like this, so I'm already on guard that this may not be a suitable source. The URL and the logo at the top of the screen tell me that this is an article from Wired.com. It looks kind of like an online news magazine, and if I wanted to be sure, I could do a Google search, and Wikipedia would tell me that yes, Wired is a magazine focused on how emerging technologies affect culture and politics. If I click on the author link, I'll see that she is a journalist. And when I read the first paragraphs, I can see that the article is written in a fairly casual and breezy tone. That's enough evidence for me to decide that this is a popular magazine, and as such scores fairly low on the authority and audience tests. This article doesn't score well on the transparency test either, because it doesn't have a list of references at the end. It does occasionally include a link to sources in the text, but these are of rather mixed quality. A few of them are academic articles, but not enough. Truly reliable articles don't rely on hyperlinks to refer to sources. It only takes broken links and 404 not found errors, and we'd have no idea what sources were being used here. Proper academic references should give you enough information about the source so that you can find it without the hyperlink. I also have my doubts about the objectivity of this article, because the author keeps referring to President Trump as an example of repeated misinformation. Now, he is a legitimate example of this phenomenon, but continually referring to him suggests that there may be a political agenda here. So, the only test that this article passes well is the currency test, and I would not be using it in a university assignment. The second article looks more promising. It has 3 authors, and if I skip to the end, I can see that they're all affiliated with different universities. This is a good indication that research in this field is their job. Skipping back to the beginning again, I can also see this article is dated 2016 and comes from Behavioural Science and Policy, a publication of the Behavioural Science and Policy Association. If I Google these titles, I will find that this is an international peer-reviewed journal from a well-respected organisation. So this article passes the authority, audience and currency tests. As you might expect from a good quality academic article, all sources are linked, from the number here in the text to the long list of academic articles and books in the reference list. This satisfies the preliminary transparency test. I'd have to read more slowly and critically to judge any further. Reading quickly through the article, I can see that the language is formal, though not too difficult to understand, and it concentrates on describing the results of research on the topic. So the article seems to pass the objectivity test too, and would be an ideal source for a university paper on the topic of misinformation. The first 2 articles were very clear examples of reliable and unreliable sources. So for the third example, I've chosen something a little trickier to judge. The URL and title banner tell me that this comes from The Conversation, and the Who We Are link at the bottom of the page tells me that The Conversation publishes news and views written by academic researchers but aimed at a public audience. The list of authors on the right shows their academic qualifications and affiliations, so this article clearly meets the authority test, but it scores less well on audience, as this is information provided for a public rather than academic audience. Unlike the scholarly article in the previous example, this article does not have a list of references. Instead, it uses the same method of linking that we saw in the first article from Wired, and it shares the same problems associated with this method of referencing. A quick scan through the text doesn't show any indications that the article lacks objectivity, and it was published very recently, so it's current by anyone's standards. Essentially, we're looking at a piece of journalism here. It was written by academic researchers, but it isn't a proper academic article. So while it scores high for authority, objectivity, and currency, it's not quite up to the same standard as the second article we looked at. If I were writing a paper on misinformation, I would use this article as a starting point to help me understand the issues, but then I'd look for more scholarly sources. These kinds of journalistic articles or blog posts are often written by academic researchers to publicise their research to a wider audience. So one way to jump from here to more serious literature would be to look for the authors' names in the library databases. You may have noticed that 2 of these people were authors of the scholarly article from the previous example. Now that this demonstration has shown you how to look for reliability clues in the publications you read, I encourage you to write down the 5 tests and keep referring to them as you do your research for assignments. In time, you'll learn to apply them automatically to any information you find, and they'll help you to use your reading time effectively by concentrating on the information that is worth reading. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll enjoy applying the 5 reliability tests to your assignment research.